beginning with our Seahawks, and this, Bel, I don't know if you saw it, but the Geno Smith news broke while we were in the Mariners segment. And I
Yes.
was like, hey, man, you couldn't have done this just a little bit sooner. So we've got details on that deal, and it breaks it down a little bit because I believe some people saw the money and they were like, whoa. It's interesting to see how this all works out, and it's actually pretty team beneficial. So we're going to go right into our Seattle Seahawks news straight away as NFL free agency has just opened up. And the quarterback position is locked down, at least for the next year, to be exact. So why don't we go over to you, Bel, and look at the Seahawks segment.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, news broke while you were recording last week. So it was kind of interesting. I thought the same thing. Why couldn't have this been right before recording so Chuck could have caught it? But anywho, we do have the details on the Geno Smith deal. So Seahawks QB Geno Smith's incentives are tied to his 2022 stats in 5 categories. Per source, $2 million each for 4,282 yards, 30 touchdowns, a 69.755% completion, and a 100.874 passer rating, an 80% playtime, and 10 wins per playoffs. 10 wins.
And playoffs.
And playoffs, yeah. Extra $5 million if he hits them all. So that's hitting them all in terms of playoffs or hitting them all in terms of games.
Whole thing there. Basically, what this deal is from the grasp that I can get from this is that this is a deal. I mean, you look at all these numbers, right? It's like very exact. 4,282 yards, 30 touchdowns, the completion percentage, the playtime. This is and then the second part here where the only guaranteed money is in year 1. That's $12.7 million. Injury only until next February. If he's released before then, no more money will be owed to him. So this is a deal that says, hey, great year. Here's $12 million to thank you for that and the effort that went into it. Do it again. If you can do it again, great. More money for you. And then something that was key that we posted a quote about from Pete Carroll before the deal actually dropped, but we posted it afterwards, was that he was asked whether or not, because it seemed this offseason, right? It very generally seemed like the team was going to get a deal done with Geno Smith. That didn't seem like an issue. He seemed to want to be there. The Seahawks wanted him back, but Pete Carroll was asked if, considering the draft picks that the team has, if they still would draft a quarterback in the first few rounds, even if they had signed Geno Smith. And he said, yes, we can do anything that we want. So you look at this deal, right? And the first year is guaranteed, and it's only a 3-year deal as well, which is something that we talked about in terms of term, right? I don't doubt it, honestly. I would just hope it's not that number 5 pick or that number, I believe it's number 20 pick. Honestly, I would prefer to not use one of those first rounders on a quarterback. I would prefer to load up on defense heavily in those first few rounds. But yeah, that's all that is you look at the incentives that are tied to that deal, as well as the guaranteed money. That deal is a thank you for what you did last season. Do it again kind of thing. What do you think about it? I mean, we've seen a few deals break with quarterbacks. You and I joked about Daniel Jones. Jimmy Garoppolo just is getting a deal done with the Raiders. I know Tua Tagovailoa just had his opt-in picked up. What did you think of the money and looking at some of those incentives for Geno there?
Yeah, I think the way you put it is a very good way to put it. Like, you did really well this first year. Just kind of continue to do what you did that year, and then you'll continue to get these incentives. So the 80% play time, is that would obviously depend on injury, right? So like if he were to get injured then and not meet that 80%, is that how
I think the injury is something that factors in there as well, but I'm sure it's like I think it's just all of like, we saw that what you did last year. Is it sustainable? Can you do it again? Was this just a flash in the pan sort of thing where it's like, if you get outplayed by whoever we bring in, whether they bring Drew Lock back or something, and then he loses his time. It's like, okay, you only played 60% of the snaps. I'm not giving you that money, So I'm not sure on that. I think there was a thing, injury only. There's a 12 million. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure, but I'm sure it's just that kind of covers all of it. It's just we want you to do that again.
Right. Yeah. So it's like with all these incentives, because this is a lot more incentives than I'm used to seeing. I don't know if that's the same for you. But it just feels like it's like, okay, prove you can do that again, like run it back and then you'll get more money.
Yeah. Especially with how specific they are, right? It's not like 4,000 yards, 60%. It's basically what he did last year. And it's like, all right, let's see it again. Yeah. So, but yeah, with drafting a quarterback, and we've got the draft picks number, the official list of picks next here, and I want to have you look at that. But it was nice to see the $12 million against the cap is pretty good. If you're going to get the same Geno Smith that you got last year, again back this year, and I mean we saw the salary cap number. At least yesterday was around $20 million, but then with the move they made today, it kind of freed up some more. But you have to account into the amount of money that the draft picks get. So it's not like Seattle's not going to go out and have a shopping spree. It's not going to happen. But I mean, you've got a good amount of picks here, and if you do it right, like you did with the last year's draft, you could end up with some starters. So why don't you look at the draft picks?
So before I go into the draft picks, do you mean to say that I shouldn't be refreshing my Twitter TL to see any Seahawks updates anytime soon?
No, I will. Again, that's what this is for.
Okay, we'll go into our draft picks here. They have been released. Seattle will have the following picks in this year's draft. First round, number 5 and number 20. Second round, number 37 and number 52. Third round, number 83. Fourth round, number 123. Fifth round, 151 and 154. Sixth round, 198. And seventh round, 237. You mentioned not wanting to go for a QB there in 5 or 20, but where do you see a QB falling in our draft?
It's very interesting with Carolina trading up to number 1, right? Mm-hmm. There's Carolina number 1. I think Indianapolis is number 2. I could be wrong, but basically when that Carolina trade happened, it said, okay, at least 2 quarterbacks should be taken. And it kind of gives you an option. I'm hoping for Will Anderson personally. Jalen Carter's got some. We've seen Seahawks get guys who have had issues in the past, but I would just personally like Will Anderson. Second round, sure. One of those picks. First 2 in the first round, I think there are too many glaring issues on the defensive side of the ball. Plus, you want to get younger there and have sustained success there. I just don't think it's worth it to risk on any of these guys, and I don't know if there's really a surefire guy. Honestly, there's been a lot of discussion about Anthony Richardson. CJ Stroud's in this draft, and I haven't heard a lot about him. Will Levis is a guy that people have liked, but I hadn't heard of until a little bit ago. So I don't know if there's like the surefire selection. I'm not an NFL scout, obviously, but second round is where I would wait till.
Okay. And I know we have news about this, so I'll hold off on just my opinion on where we should go with the draft. So we'll move on here. On the 9th, the team has cut Gabe Jackson and Ben Burkervin. That move frees up $6.5 million in cap space. Gabe Jackson was viewed primarily as a starter, but essentially split time with Phil Haynes last season. On the 10th, the Seahawks are one of a few teams that have been speaking with, can you take a guess? Bobby Wagner. The Chargers and the Cowboys have also reached out to Wagner. I'll pause there because I know that we've spoken about Cody Barton and him not really filling the shoes too great. So is that what you see being a better fit, is just to bring back Bobby Wagner rather than to fill that slot with a draft pick?
It's tough because Well, I mean, he signed that big deal with the Rams, and he gets some of that, So my mind goes to money wise, right? It's
Okay.
like, how much does Bobby want? He's at the stage of career where he did say he prioritizes winning, so you can take the Chargers out of that, I guess. Cowboys too. I know they're not going anywhere. But I think it just comes down to money. I know that Quandre Diggs has done some great Twitter recruiting with a bunch of guys, and then Bobby changed his Twitter header to a skyline picture of Seattle. So I think they want to get it done. I'm sure Bobby Wagner, as his own agent, is considering his own options. But I have to think that some of it comes down to money. Bobby knows his worth. It's not like he had a bad season last year necessarily. Obviously, the Rams are clearing house. They traded Jalen Ramsey, and they have a bunch of other guys, I guess, that are on the trade block. So I don't think that the move to get rid of Bobby was any indication of anything. I think they're just clearing house. So I think a Wagner move would just come down to money. I think it's just about the money.
And as you mentioned, I don't think if he wants to go to a winning team, the Chargers isn't Austin Eckler going to have conversations about leaving also?
Yeah, so that's a problem. That's a pretty decent part of their offense.
Yes, and I won't even go into the Cowboys, so we'll move on here. Shelby Harris may be released as well or moved. Harris had a cryptic post on IG. A fan commented about staying in Seattle, to which Harris replied, "Not my choice." So I don't know. It sounds like maybe he could want to stay, and of course that might not pan out that way. So on March 13th, then we found out that they did cut Shelby Harris. Seattle had explored possible trades for the veteran defensive lineman, but the move saved Seattle $8.9 million against this year's cap. So I guess the not my choice was pretty clear there.
Yeah, and it was interesting to see that, whenever there's this cryptic stuff and it's just not my choice, that's where I guess they were exploring trades for the guy. But I don't know. I know that when we do, there's a reason I like to add the inactives when we do the show, right, for the respective games, because you'll notice some guys who show up and they're healthy inactives, and you're like, okay, you just not do well in practice this week? Or you like when the guys aren't actually legitimately injured, or maybe they pop up with an injury that we didn't know about. Harris was, I know he had a couple of things where he was inactive. I don't think he necessarily impressed this year. And I have to think that with one of those draft picks, Seattle does address defensive line. And so Seattle get younger and potentially cheaper, depending on where they're at with that pick. So I guess it makes sense, and fair enough. They explored trades for him. They tried to get something out of him. But interesting. I wonder if this is a plan for a free agent move, or is this we want to get younger and better with the draft kind of thing? Because Seattle's going to spend at least one of their top 4 picks with a defensive lineman. So it makes sense. I know the guy was all excited because he played his first ever playoff game with us and all that. So someone will pick him up. I know someone will.
We move into some league news here. As you mentioned, the NFL offseason is heating up. On the 10th, Eagles allowed Darius Slay to seek a trade. The Eagles' 5-time Pro Bowl corner has been made available. That one is kind of shocking to me just because I feel like Slay is such a key part to the Eagles defense. So curious to see how that pans out. On the 11th, some more Aaron Rodgers drama if you hadn't gotten enough. The Packers Jets, there's trade reports on the Packers and Jets. The deal was nearly made. Teams now waiting to hear if Aaron Rodgers will accept trade to New York or retire. So in the news this morning about Jimmy G, the Jets were possibly interested, but they were on a wait and see. So I don't know if Jimmy G signing with the Raiders is any indication of maybe Aaron to the Jets, but I guess we'll wait to find out. Report hours later says that both sides are still waiting on Rodgers' plans before they agree to a deal. Now, this trade to New York or retire to me, are those really the only 2 options? Is a stay with the Packers not on the table?
I don't think he wants to be there anymore, and I think they're sick of him. I know that. I don't know who it was. Someone in the Packers organization was like, "Oh, well, he could come back if what we want to happen doesn't happen." And I was like, "So even that wording tells me you don't want him here." I don't think either side wants him in a Green Bay uniform next year. So I have to think those are the only two options. I know you mentioned Oakland, and there's that stuff earlier. Oakland, Las Vegas, whatever. I haven't heard anything about that outside of when he was like, "Oh, Devontae can buy me a house." Nothing. So unless they're a dark horse
No.
in this, well, and they just signed Jimmy. Yeah. So
They just signed Jimmy. Yeah.
never mind. Yeah, it's I think he's going to New York and he's gonna follow in Brett Favre's footsteps, and then maybe at some point he'll go to the Vikings and all that weird stuff. So
we'll wait to find out. I think the offseason and Aaron Rodgers news is always interesting until it's not. So on the 12th, Jalen Ramsey was traded to the Dolphins. Former Ram star is headed back to the Dolphins for the 2023 third round pick and tight end Hunter Long. Ramsey will get an additional $25 million, and the Dolphins agreed to fully guarantee his contract for 23 and 24. Those are the most notable headlines about the current offseason. Did you have something to add?
no, I'm waving goodbye to Jalen Ramsey. He could go rot in hell in South Beach and enjoy that.
Damn. Okay. Well, we'll move on to.
I don't like the guy. He's annoying. He was DK Metcalf's backpack in that game down in LA. So
I mean, it will be nice not to have to see him in the division anymore. So
he was so excited when he picked off Geno in that game in week 19. They're not that long, in week 18, and then he posted pics where he was like flipping off a fan. He was all like tough guy, and they lost the game. I was like, whatever, dude. Whatever. Anyway,